The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and FreedomSlips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, FreedomSlips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
And welcome to The Divine Truth on Revolution Radio with myself and my co-host this evening, Sarah Adams. Sarah, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Now, I'm just going to introduce our guest. She's the founder of ACERN, which is the Australian Close Encounter Research Network. She's also an author, a hypnotherapist, and counsellor. I'd just like to welcome Mary Rodwell to the show. Hi, Mary.
Hi, Taj, and hi, Sarah. Lovely to speak with you.
Hi, Sarah, you there? You seem to...
Yes, I think it sounds very far away. It did sound like you're. It sounded like you're definitely thousands of miles away. It's so lovely to be able to speak with you, Mary.
Oh, it's a pleasure. I'm looking forward to speaking to you both today.
You're in Australia, aren't you, Mary? I think is it what time? What time is it over there at the moment?
Actually, it's 8 o'clock in the morning, which is a good time for me because I've had a chance to have at least a couple of cups of coffee and a cup of tea.
That's good. That's good.
It's evening here, and everybody needs me today. I was barely able to get on here. Everybody definitely needs me, and I'm definitely somebody who tries to help everyone around me. And today was that day.
Now, I'm not too sure where to start with the show. There's a whole load of topics we can cover, really, but
Aliens.
Aliens, yeah. I want to start off about your new book, The New Human. And what sort of inspired you to write the book? And can you tell us a little bit about some of the people who are in the book?
Well, have you got a couple of days?
Well, the short version. What inspired you to write the book in the first place?
Well, I'd been hassled by a lot of people saying, when are you going to write your next book, Mary? After I wrote Awakening in 2002, which is primarily written because so many people were coming to me saying they were having experiences, wondering whether or not they were going crazy. How did they deal with it? How did they deal with their families who may not believe them? You know, what did they do about the fear? All those kinds of things that come up once you have an experience out of the ordinary, what I call, non-human, anomalous experiences, paranormal experiences, or feelings that, you're being picked up by some non-human intelligence. So it was a book to help people through the process because not everyone felt they could go and see a psychologist. And so many were very wary about going and seeing a psychiatrist because in their heart, they knew they weren't going crazy, but at the same time, they were trying to understand it. So that was the motivation behind writing Awakening. But from that time, so many people, families globally were getting in touch with me after they'd seen my presentations and saying, look, those are my kinds of experiences, can you tell me more about how I deal with it? How do I understand it? And a lot of the time, it was even broader than what mainstream ufology was talking about. It wasn't just primarily seeing a craft with a number of people or taking a picture of it or whatever. They were having experiences which meant that they felt they were being taken on craft. They were interacting with these beings, not just as some believe as a kind of victim, but actually as a participant. They were believing they were doing things on the craft. They were helping the beings. And some of them, and particularly the small children, were talking about the fact that these beings were family, that they felt more connected to them than their human family, which is really, really strange. So really the motivation for The New Human was to broaden this whole phenomena out into something that was a lot more multidimensional in nature, in the sense that they were, a lot of people have past lives where they recognized being on having lifetimes on other planets, recognizing they were coming here in a human incarnation to say, I've come with gifts and abilities from where I came from. And the fascinating thing with the first 9 chapters really are about the children. And these are children primarily under 10 years old that have conscious recall. This is not hypnosis. This is conscious recall of being on other planets in other lifetimes, conscious recall of their awareness, conscious recall of being taken up on spacecraft, being shown various planets, including the Mars and the Moon, and being aware of other beings on those particular, on the Moon and on Mars, and actually explaining to me a far broader paradigm than the one that most of the time we're taught to believe is our reality, which is the 3D reality. So the book is not just a ufological book. It's actually about consciousness. It's about the many ways that we are interacting with these beings, not just through, seeing them on spacecraft or being taken on spacecraft, but through near-death experiences that waken you up to your multidimensional reality, or out-of-body experiences that may actually be the way that you start to realize that you're interacting with these beings. And it can be through a spiritual practice. It can be through a Kundalini awakening or a shamanic awakening. So really, what I've done with this book is take it one step further and broaden the mandate, which is really looking at human consciousness.
Right. I found it interesting in one of your talks that you said 85% of abduction experiences are positive. And it's funny how we don't really hear about the positive experience. We only hear about, the bad experiences, the bad abductions. Why do you think that is?
Well, it's a really good question, Taj, and it's really an important one. What has been wonderful for me since I started, I created ACERN, which is the Australian Close Encounter Resource Network, which I created to provide professional counselling and hypnotherapy to those having experiences that that needed somewhere to go, that would have a therapeutic process. From that, my research was indicating that only about 25% of those coming to me were in the fear place, as I call it, through feeling like they had no choice, and they were really scared, really terrified. But the rest of them were saying, but their family, I'm not afraid of them. I just find it difficult being on planet Earth where nobody believes you and everyone's, they dismiss your experiences and your awareness, and they don't, can't believe that you may actually be okay with this. What was brilliant for me was a couple of years, 2 to 3 years ago now, with another gentleman, Ray Hernandez, who's actually a lawyer, an attorney in the US, connecting to Dr. Rudy Shield, who's an astrophysicist, and finally Dr. Edgar Mitchell. We created FREE, which is the Dr. Edgar Mitchell Foundation for Research into Extraterrestrial Encounters. What we've done in that organization, most of the directors are PhDs in either physics, astrophysics, psychology, or a broader spectrum of support, like myself, researchers. And what we put together is a survey which has 600 questions in the first and second survey, with now nearly 4,000 people who filled these questionnaires out. And we've discovered a completely different picture on what is traditionally seen through media, that this is a scary phenomena, that we are all victims of these nasty ETs, etc. And what we're finding is life-changing for many people, but also turning everything we've known on its head, which is something that I've been aware of through my own research, but to have it validated in these very wonderful surveys that we're doing, and we're going into even more depth with those. The 2 chairs of this survey, I mean, their credentials are impeccable. Both of them are, one of them is a retired neuroscientist, Dr. Bob Davis. The other one is a retired professor of parapsychology and psychology, Dr. John Klimo. And they've actually orchestrated these surveys with the resources we have. And what we're discovering is 85% of people, have found this transformative, that they found that it has changed their life in really, really positive ways. And, some of them, 50% had healings performed from the craft, you know, life-changing healings, for example. This is not what you hear, you know, through mainstream and through the general way that we've looked at this experience in ufology.
I think that anything different is shown as evil in a way, sadly, you know, rather than being investigated. I myself have been healed a lot of times from UFOs. One time I was having issue with my skin and I wasn't well at all, and they used light to heal me. I also remember living on Mars and know that I definitely am not from this planet, and I interact all the time with ETs and walk the dimension. So this is something very common to me. They're my family, whereas it's very hard for me to get on here on Earth. You know, it's quite hard for me, and they're helpful in every single way to me, and it's quite magical. Yet all, you know, it's quite sad that a lot of people still don't see that there is this sort of help, and there are beings out there that do mean positive for humanity.
So it's really wonderful that you're owning that and you're sharing that, because for you know, a lot of people that are hearing this maybe for the first time don't realize how common that is. They don't realize how many people actually relate to being born on other planets. And, you know, one of the fascinating things that you mentioned, you know, about knowing about Mars, I've had children under, you know, 8-year-old girls tell me that they've been taken up on craft and shown Mars and been shown domes on Mars. They know that there are beings under the surface of Mars, and they've been actually taught various things on these spacecraft as well, with hybrid beings and other humanoids, and seeing mantis beings. I mean, you will know what I'm talking about.
Yes, because yes, I experienced a lot of this. Now what's interesting is when I was a child, I was taking up to this into the spacecraft a lot, and they explained to me that people around me will not understand me as much because that I am not, the fact that I'm not human, and I speak with telepathy and through colors and emotions. So this this was really hard for me in life, communication, because I would expect the person near me to, you know, to know what I was feeling and so on. I wasn't used to language. It was very, very foreign to me. So I was quite frustrated, and they would take me and tell me, you know, that, you know, that language is a lower form of communication, and that a lot of the hybrid children, or a lot of the ETs that were, you know, in bodies, were having a very hard time communicating, because language to them was just, it's basically primitive. And they were saying that some of the hybrid children were having issues connecting to their mothers and getting quite frustrated because of the fact when they'd cry and stuff like that, they were trying to send telepathic communication to their mothers, human mothers, who weren't sensing that. They were getting very, very frustrated. So they would have to come take the children and, you know, do some sort of therapy and speak to them and assure them that everything's going to be okay, then put the children back. So there was a whole bunch of that went on with me when I was growing up, and they explained to me a lot of things like that.
Sarah, I'm so glad that you said that, and I think that's really important, because I've heard so many tell me similar things, that they've come in telepathic, and their problem is sometimes learning to, because they connect to their mother's emotions and their mother's feelings, sometimes they have difficulty in separating out what is their feelings and emotions compared to the connection they have with their mother. And as you say, they're telepathic. So for them, language is primitive, and they really struggle with it. One particular lady had the experience of actually being a walk-in, which is a soul that comes into a human body that's already you know, reached a certain age. And she said she came in from a cylindrical spacecraft. She was a 9-foot being, blonde hair, blue eyes, telepathic. And she said she walked into a 3-year-old female body. And she said her biggest problem was she didn't know about language, and she didn't even know how to eat, because they didn't eat in the same way. They absorbed light as energy. So
yes,
she said
this is a problem for me. Yes.
Okay, so
this is a huge problem for me.
Yeah. Well, she said it was really hard to learn that she had to eat to nourish herself, and that also she had to learn to speak. because here on this planet, this is how we operate. But a lot of the new children coming in, as you've mentioned, and I talk about this, in the new human, is that they are coming in as telepathic. And as you say, they're communicating in a mind meld. Often, they're expecting others to be as aware and understand them. But of course, we don't. And so the parents get frustrated because they don't know what's going on with the child, but the child's getting frustrated because they're expecting the parent to understand without them having to say anything. So there's all this going on, which, really is described in the new human, is the frustration is when they're seeing energy fields and they're seeing emotion as colors. As one little 16-year-old was saying, I know when someone's angry. I know because I'm seeing the color in their energy field. I'm seeing their frustration.
I can see all the blockages. Yes, and people, everything like that. It's absolutely interesting, and I just it's sometimes it's very hard to get on, because when I go in crowds and stuff, I can feel people's emotions so deeply if they're mine, and feel I take the negative energy from them and give them a lot of light energy. And yes, this has been a huge issue in my life, that I can only eat foods that are highly energetic, otherwise that are charged with light energy. Otherwise my body gets sick. It cannot put up with any lower frequency foods that don't have light energy in it. So a lot of these little hybrid children, it's interesting. I think that there's a sort of a war going on with them from governments trying to sort of hide all of this stuff. And that's why there's so much programming on very dense and lower foods, to feed to the children. I believe there's a sort of war on consciousness going on like that also.
I think you're absolutely spot on there. And Sarah, because we do know that a lot of our food now is being interfered with, the GMOs, etc. We also know that this appears to be, as you say, a war on consciousness, dumbing down these new aware humans that have come to the planet.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because the way the energy flows, okay, so when the if there's blockages in the body, it's not allowing being an energetic being. I try to explain to people, ETs are energetic beings, what you call angels, ETs, deities, whatever. A lot of the things, names and labels people have for them are the same thing. And they're energetic beings. So to get in a body is dense. And if blockages from food and stuff like that creates blockages, you cannot flow through your body right. And it literally sort of numbs you out. And considering that a lot of these gifted children have come here to help out the world, I know this because I came here to help out the world. I was on Mars. I remember my life on Mars. I remember going among the planets. I still can access all of that. I can get out of my body and go and speak to ETs and other beings and stuff like that. But if my body is had anything lower frequency, it doesn't function right. And I think that's something that they're doing to these children. They're trying to block them down when they're really small, when they're really little, when they don't have immense shields, and block out them on an energetic level, so that exactly the consciousness of the planet is kept down like that.
Mm.
I fully agree with you, and this is what I write about is what I call the new programs. ADHD, Asperger's, dyslexia, some forms of autism are all the new programs, and part of them is the reason that we find it difficult to understand that is because they don't operate very well in 3D. The reason they don't operate well in 3D is because they're not 3D, they are multidimensional, and so that they can't be put in this box. And so what do? We actually dumb them down. We dumb down ADHD by sticking, their drugs down their face, as a way of dumbing them down. But actually, what Tracy Taylor told me many years ago in 2000, she said the DNA of the new human has tenfold the amount of information, and things such as telepathy, manipulation of time and space, nonverbal communication are conscious abilities and are natural. She said their molecular structure allows the cells of the body to vibrate faster. Everything's accelerated, including the immune system. So this was her understanding of these new children coming in, these new humans. And they are struggling with the density of this planet, but also because, as you say, there is a war on consciousness. There are agencies out there that know these new this awareness is coming into the planet through these children, and everything that, you know, that we're seeing, from fluoride to chemtrails to, you know, the food being manipulated, and everything like this is part of the way of dumbing them down.
So I have a question for you, and this is because of what I experience in life. Do you think that many governments are literally warring against ETs, good ETs that have come to Earth to try to help free humanity?
My understanding is that the governments that we see, most of the time, I think they're ignorant of what's actually going on. I think they're the kinds of puppets. They're there to do, you know, the average thing. But I think behind that are certainly agencies that are there, that actually control all of this. And, you know, these covert agencies, you know, there are many names given to these individuals, these groups, that certainly do not want humanity to evolve, because at the moment they're controlling everything. They're controlling us. Anyone who thinks they're free is fooling themselves, because you've really, you know, you don't have to be a brain surgeon to work out the many ways that human beings are being controlled at the moment. And there are many different ways, not just through the food and what have you, but what you see on the television, the programming and conditioning. A 9-year-old told me from Northern Europe, who speaks 3 different star languages. One of them, she says she can heal water when she speaks the language to it. She was speaking about it. She said, going to school is the worst thing, she said, because they program you out of your light, was the way she described it. She said, and the teachers just press the keys. That is the way they want humanity to be, these agencies. They do not want humanity to evolve. And so there are many different ways. They know about this. They know that there's a shift of consciousness going on, and anything they can do to slow it up or stop it is part of that. And anyone who thinks I'm being a conspiracy theorist needs to look into everything from chemtrails, everything to the food, and wonder why on earth we're doing this to this planet and to the people, because there's got to be an agenda for that, because no one in their right minds would want this to go on this planet now.
I believe that religion and also the whole school system is literally, yes, it is very, very evil to the light that's brought here to Earth by many, many beings, including myself. I've struggled with a lot of it. I've struggled with a lot of stuff on that level, you know, just the fact that people in society are so programmed into certain beliefs. It's absolutely horrendous on many, many levels.
Well, this is part of the, you know, the agenda is that if you can get people only believing 3D, in other words, what you can touch, feel, sense, and smell is the only reality, then you shut down their multidimensional awareness, and you shut down that ability they have to connect to everything that is giving them more understanding, more awareness of their abilities and who they are. Because that's the other part of you know, the nature of humanity is that we have a consciousness that goes beyond space-time, that can connect to the, you know, to the matrix, to the, you know, to the quantum hologram of consciousness. And what they're doing is shutting that down, whether or not it's through, you know, some of the organized religions, whether through its education and programming, whether it's, you know, everything that we are taught is an inaccurate version when it's only in 3D. What we're not allowed to honor is the fact that we get intuition, we get feelings, we get knowings, we have awareness that is also with us, but is shut down because we're told not to trust it.
Mary, I wanted to ask you, like earlier when we said like 85% abductions are positive, have you come across things like military abductions, which when I was like thinking maybe that accounts for like the 15-20% of like people who come to you with like fear, and that they're not actually aliens abducting them, but they're the military using, you know, military aircraft. Have you come across anything like that?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's a good question, Taj. What I want to say is that the 85% do not see that they've been abducted. They are actually, you know, having contact. They're having encounters with these beings that they see as family. And, you know, even when I've worked with people in the fear place who have felt that they have been taken against their will when it's an extraterrestrial encounter, is when you do hypnosis. And one of the questions I ask is, have you, on any level consented to this experience. And 9 times out of 10, they'll say, yes, but before I came here. So that as a soul, they've consented to come in and interact from this perspective. So it isn't an abduction. It's actually a consensual thing. But getting back to the MILAB, that is the darker side of this. And unfortunately, people will connect that to extraterrestrials when many times, from my understanding of working with people who've had MILAB experiences, this is covert, military agencies that abduct people, and they will believe sometimes that it's extraterrestrial. They'll not always believe that, because they do have programmed life forms that look like ETs, but they're programmed life forms that are not extraterrestrial. This is another aspect of this. The most traumatized I've ever come across are those that have had the military abductions.
Yeah.
And a lot of the public don't even know.
I've experienced that, and I've experienced a lot of issues with the government sort of probing into things, and it's because I have such high abilities too. They're very interested in hacking that for themselves, on every single level. And they've used sound weapons on me, definitely a couple of times, that have hurt me, because sound and light is the things that I'm very sensitive to. I'm very, very sensitive to them. So the sound, when it hits, it's like a wall that would hit me once, and I literally fell on the ground. I fell out on the ground in pain. So they know exactly what they're warring with. They know that ETs are energetic beings, and that they can mess with them through sound and light. I'm very, very aware of this, and I'm pretty sure that's how they're keeping humanity, so controlled, is through sound and light on many different levels.
Yeah, I think the problem with the military and the government is they always want to weaponize everything. They feel like if they find these beings who have abilities, they have to work out a way how they can weaponize it.
This is a huge problem, though. I saw that, and I saw recently that the president of the United States, that during this presidency, there's going to be a sort of where all of this comes out, that the last president, he was supposed to let it out on some level, and he didn't. And they're very unhappy. The higher-ups are very unhappy that the children are being hurt. They're very unhappy that there's a war on consciousness like this. They're not happy about this on many, many levels. And it's definitely, I know I can sense it. And what the meetings, I often am pulled to meetings, and I was shown quite a few times that there's going to be sort of where it's all going to be put out in public soon enough.
Well, this might
they can't hold it back.
I think, Sarah, most people like yourself are, waiting for this to happen. How it's going to happen? Some feel that it's fairly close, that something's going to happen, an event or some kind of shift where this will be disclosed.
From what I was shown, because of the nuclear wars that happened a long time ago, that wiped out everything a lot. They don't want humanity going back to nuclear war. They will do anything to keep this from happening. So what I was shown is that if it ever came down to where there would be world wars like that, that's when their presence definitely would be shown. Because, before, the world wouldn't destroy itself with nuclear. Nowadays, it's a lot worse. So there are a lot of beings that are working, and ETs that are working against nuclear wars happening here on Earth. I was reading some of the astronauts and some people who have worked in the nuclear program, saying that there was always UFOs around there that were shutting down their whole systems a lot, and the government refused to let this out.
Absolutely. And interestingly, what I'm hearing is that there are many different ways that they're assisting us, and one of them is the obvious one, is if you've got those that come from your source, your particular origin, what better than to bring them incarnated into human form and have them working from the inside, as it were. And I think that that's part of what's going on. But you're quite right that there does seem to be now this war on consciousness but with the understanding that that we will get there in the end. I mean, a lot of people are seeing the world in chaos at the moment, very, very worried about where it's all going to go. And I say to them, you know, it's usually the darkest before the dawn. And all these wonderful souls that are coming in at the moment are not coming in for a waste of time. They've come in because they know that ultimately this will happen and that we will get the planet that we all want to live on, and it certainly isn't the way it is now. But it's wonderful that, Sarah, that you've got that insight, and many others are telling me similar things. So, you know, it's great corroboration, isn't it, that this is going on?
It's amazing. And what you said about the ocean, the last time I was in LA, the ocean talked to me, and she said that sound would heal her, and I needed to tell people to gather up around the ocean and start to sing to her and chant to her that all the healing for the whole world, including people themselves, for animals, for the ocean, everything was within the voice, within the sound of our voices, and that I needed to tell people to sing to the ocean because she's really upset at being polluted, and she's like a woman who has been deeply hurt, you know, sort of a battered woman in a way, because humanity has not taken care of her. So I cried for a couple of hours when I was down at the ocean because I literally felt her emotions and her pain. She was deeply, deeply in pain. And then she just requested that I tell humanity that, you know, to sing to her so that she can heal, because the sound will appease her and heal her on every single level.
And I think that's really important, that people realize that there's enough evidence to show how this works now. Masaru Emoto, the Japanese scientist, was showing how water can be programmed and how we can re-energize it through prayer, through sound, through intention. I mean, his book's Messages in Water is showing us how that actually works, about the frequency of what we're sending. And remember, water, we're 70% water. So, you know, when you're sending love, intent, or you're praying, you're actually lifting the frequency, which is actually being absorbed by, you know, the water in our bodies, the water in the oceans, the water that's everywhere, because it can be programmed and energized. And when this young 9-year-old told me that she speaks a language that heals water, again, we're really just talking about frequency. So everything you're saying there, Sarah, makes absolute sense to me.
I do tend to speak in some, I will ask you about this because I have always kept this to myself. And excuse me one second, I'm plugging in my charger here. Okay, so since I was young, I was able to go into the dimensions, and it's one, I have always been able to sort of become everything, you know, sort of become just energy and become everything, literally. One time when I was young, I was pulled out of my body and floating above the earth. I could look down literally and see the earth. So that's happened to me quite a few times since then, but that one time was very interesting because I was in France and I was walking and it happened to me. But talk about speech or language. When I get into the realms, there's this a sound, but it's not it's not a sound that you can hear. It's sort of an invisible sound, and it literally would come out of my mouth, out of my throat, and it would just clear and reorganize things all the time. Like it could reorganize matter, stuff like that. Maybe this is what that little girl was talking about.
I think so. I think one of the interesting things that Dr. Lena Olsson, who is a molecular biologist in Sweden, who I mention in my book, The New Human, a number of times, because she's an experiencer and a letter person, as she calls herself as well. You know, Asperger's, stroke, ADHD. She actually mentions that, you know, your senses as a new human are expanded. And what she was saying is that they have above normal sensory cells for pressure in the skin, hear sound frequencies way above and below normal, for example, aware of minute differences in shades of color than normal range, taste and smell is enhanced, sensitive to all frequencies, overwhelmed at times by sensory overload, sensitivity to radioactive radiation, energy fields, energies beaming from angry people as well as love and happiness. So these are the expansion of this awareness that you're speaking about, Sarah, when you say that you can connect on those, you know, on that far finer level of reality, or you know, that multidimensional level of reality where you are aware of manipulating matter from the sounds of it. You know that you can actually affect that through your own frequency and what you're doing. Is that how you understand it?
Yes, this is how I understand it. I have a couple of times definitely changed form from this form to another form. One time I saw the whole earth as sort of a weave. There's an Indian depiction of an older woman who's sitting there and weaving. She's weaving, and I think that that's depiction that the American Indians use. That everything's connected. Well, I saw the whole earth as that once. It was a weave of energies, and it's interesting because I could see the lifelines of people all woven in, lifelines of animals, everything. It was absolutely amazing.
It actually, I've never shared this before, but when I was wanting to see my connection to a number of individuals that I had in this lifetime, and I was expecting to see maybe a past life or something like that in this regression. But what I was shown was really unusual in the sense I was taken to what appeared to be a planet, but it wasn't solid. It was actually like a multicolored ball of wool I could see all these different colored energies and what have you. And interestingly, it was, as I say, it wasn't solid, it was energetic. And I was taken to connect with these souls on this energetic planet that literally looked like it was a matrix of frequency more than anything else. And I found myself going into a certain color or frequency, which took me to my question, which was, who am I connected with on this, on planet Earth right now? And it took me to years prior to this, where I was actually shown the connection and the agreement between myself and other souls that I'd actually had interaction with. And I found that really strange at the time. I didn't expect something that wasn't going to be physical, but it was in fact energetic. So everything you're saying to me actually makes a lot more sense now from what you're telling me.
My aura is rainbow colored, and it's very rare from what I've been told. So I was trying to explain to people that each one of the colors allows me to access a different dimension. So what you were experiencing is that I've went to that place. It's multicolored, and there's one that's also it's almost like it's Aurora Borealis. Is that was it like Aurora Borealis?
Well, when I asked the question, it's like, you're tapping into your subconscious, superconscious aspect. But it was literally like a multicolored ball of wool, literally as though the wool, different parts of the wool had been dipped in different colors, and it was all wrapped together in a planetary size. And when I went onto it, I found myself going down one particular frequency, like this frequency of color of one particular color, which took me to where I was seeking information. It was, that's how it appeared to be. It was really strange. And at the time, I didn't quite know what to make of it, other than I was then in a space where I was with those other souls that I was choosing to incarnate with and connect with in the physical. And they were showing me what they were looking like in the physical. So that was how it was, how it was portrayed to me when I asked that question. But if everything is frequency, which is we're told by, physicists that everything is a frequency anyway, that makes a great deal of sense now when I look back on it.
Yes, because the colors allow you to access different frequencies, different dimensions, and different information. So the more colors you can access, the more things you can access. This is why the color range in society is mostly gray, black, and white. They don't really put a huge color range. Notice even in cities, the gray brick, even in fashion, a lot of gray and white and black, because of the fact that keeps people in lower frequencies, and they're not accessing the higher frequencies from the colors. And this is also in food spectrum, like vegetables and fruits have all the color frequencies. When you eat them, it charges your aura with those color frequencies, allowing you to be more multidimensional. However, in society, if you look at fast food, the color ranges on them are just very, very dull, horrible color ranges, and that's affecting the very soul energy that people have.
That's absolutely fascinating, and it actually makes a lot of sense to me in terms of what you're saying. the trouble is with all of this, Sarah, that, there are so many people that are still asleep that will, hear this kind of thing. And it really is, it's like you're speaking another language. And what is heartening to me, though, is in the last few years, how many people have shifted their awareness or been activated and become aware then of this understanding. But it seems like the children that are being born already activated, they're already awake. But we've got many of our planet now that are feeling the frequencies coming from, from our solar systems, but also the frequencies that these children are bringing in, and individuals like yourself that are now activating people. I call it like, throwing a pebble in a pond, and you've got all these ripples going out that are reaching people, even if they're not quite ready to wake up and be activated, are starting to question, are starting to understand there's more on multiple levels here, and everything that we're thinking is part of how we are going to wake up. So, for me, it's wonderful that you're literally owning this and you're sharing it, because I'm sure there are many people listening to this that will think, oh, thank goodness, it's not just me. And that's why I wrote the books.
I will definitely have, I did, look into some of your, some of your work. I will definitely be ordering your books, and it's amazing the work you do. I'm sure that you're going to be blessed more and more because of that. I know that the universe cares very much about all the special children. I know that the universe cares deeply about me, and anybody who does work with people who are special and who does stand up for them and who does do anything to help. I know that they're greatly blessed by the universe. I do believe in a divine power of goodness, of a light power. When I talk about God, I try to explain to people, I'm very, very spiritual, but not as in, I don't have religion. But the thing is I'm tapped into this force, and it's this force of light, and that's where all the information, it streams through me, and I'm connected to it, and it nurtures me and takes care of me. And I was trying to explain that many of these beings, that's what they're connected to. They're connected to this omnipotent, omnipresent force of goodness throughout the universe, this light energy, and that's where all the information comes from.
Yeah, I think Sarah's explained this before, like all of our souls are connected, and we're all like connected. It's like our soul is a piece of God, a piece of a source.
Yes, piece of light.
Yeah, so we're all like connected to God in that way, because our soul, our spirit, whatever you want to call it, is a fragment of God.
Oh, look, I have absolutely no difficulty with that at all. And interestingly, when you've got a 9-year-old explaining to you about God, and how she explained it to me was, God is, got no gender, is the first thing she said, for a start. And she said lives in Dayland, as she calls it, where the angels and the light live, and she calls it an ultra-terrestrial, which is a very interesting way to describe God. And I've heard this before, and it's interesting that a 9-year-old in Northern Europe, comes out with a term like that, for example. And she said we all come from there, and that we've chosen to come into denser realities as a way of the soul experiencing, but we are all connected to that, and we're all part of it. And she explained it, it's almost like we're all helping each other to grow, so that, depending on the level of awareness we choose, is that we're being helped by those that little bit more aware, and we're helping the ones less aware to also evolve into higher awareness. So it's almost we're all helping each other, and that's part of the connection. It's because each other is just a reflection of our connection to the soul family of light anyway. So every time you help someone else, you're not only helping them, but you're helping yourself.
Yes, because the universe repays you back energy when you do good. That's what makes these beings immortal. That's what I would try to tell people when I say I'm immortal, that I've traveled many worlds and traveled a lot, but it's always been from me doing good. No matter if I was killed in certain worlds or stuff like that, the universe would always bring me back, because it gives me enough energy to constantly be immortal energetically. People who do things that, are terrible to each other, they lose energy. I was trying to explain this to people. You become multidimensional when you put more energy within yourself, and you put more energy within yourself with a good diet and within doing good for others.
Yeah, and this is where we know, you know, I've often ended some of my articles or presentations with a little 8-year-old who said to her mother, "But Mum, we're the aliens," which I think
Yeah.
basically said it all. You know, there's this whole thing of you know, the us and them that is put out there. You know, there's either, you know, you're always the good ones and everybody else is the not so good or whatever. But if you look at this from a soul perspective, where many of these young children are aware of their origins, whether or not it's the Pleiades, Arcturus, or as one 10-year-old who told me he came through a portal in the sun and other dimensions. You know, these are what these children are telling me. And you know, when you look at it, and they'll say, you know, that, I mean, I always remember, and I mention this young gentleman quite a lot because of what he said. I was talking to his father, and his father, as I was talking to his father who's in the US, and his son came in. He's all of 9 years old at the time, and he said, "Can I speak to Mary?" And I actually was surprised, and I said, "You know, what is it that makes you want to speak to me?" And he said, "Well, it's because of your frequency." And then proceeded to tell me that he was from Orion, that he was a light physicist, worked with time travel technologies. And this was what this awareness and his abilities were what he's bringing to this planet. He said, but the problem is most human scientists are not really have the ability to understand what he's talking about. He said the nearest is Tesla. But the whole point is that he was very aware of his origins. He was very aware of the gifts he was coming in with. And he was also, you know, as many of them are, they, you know, they'll mention the planet of origin, not that that's the only one that they come from, but that might have been the one that they're most connected to at the moment with their consciousness. But, you know, when you talk about Mars, for example, Sarah, there's a young man called Zach in my book. I've got 2 chapters on Zach because he's, as a 16-year-old, he's a little bit older than that now, told me that his previous incarnation was on Mars and that he told me he could build interstellar craft. And I said, do you remember from, you know, from a download, or are you taught that now? And he said, no, this is from my past life. I used to build them when I was on Mars. And so I still retain that information from that lifetime. And that's something that's going on as well, is that these children and these new aware souls are bringing in their gifts from total recall, for want of a better word, of where they've come from. And this again shows us there's not an us and them here. It's just that we've got a lot of these non-human intelligences incarnating in human form to work from the inside rather than from the outside, if you like, to actually help that shift.
I can explain this because there's, okay, so and Taj knows this, I explained that I've come through the sun before I went to other planets. So I've come through the sun. Right. Black holes, when I go to the other side, the black holes are created as portals, and so they're just now finding this out. By the way, they think that the black holes might go to a parallel universe. They're going to find out that they do go to another place. So I do sometimes go back and forth through the black holes. The black holes are created for anything. They're sort of coded energetically, so anything that its energy is not right, it will not let it pass, but it'll rip it apart energetically. It'll literally shatter it. But if the energy is right, if your energy's code is right, you can get through it. That's how I pass back and forth. So I came through the sun. I went to some other planets. Now, what I was told is before I came through the sun, this is what I was told. I was told that a lot of beings came here specifically from my family. Most of my family had come to Earth to try to help out a long time ago, including my father, and that he had been down here for a very long time because there's a war going on where they're trying to bring more light energy here. So the highest light beings would come here to try to bring more light energy here. When they got down here, some of them would get stuck. This is from a long, long time ago. So I was told not to come down here, but insisted that I come down here. Anyhow, they're all house up there. There's sort of a what they call, okay, so with everything going on, there's a group of beings that they always, per se, for worlds, dimensions and stuff, they meet together and they make the best choices since they're very evolved. They're they're beyond time. Time does not exist for them. I could not put it in a word of how ancient they are, but they do make, they do make decisions specifically where there's a lot of dense matter, there's a lot of dark matter, and this dark matter cuts off it cuts off people from connecting with the higher beings. So there's sort of around the world there was a very dense energy, darker energy, sort of a shell around the world, and so to pierce that shell you'd have to get through there and then stay connected so you could pass back and forth. And it's very hard because a lot of people are in deficit of energy because people got stuck here a long time ago. They were supposed to sort of evolve and travel on through the stars, travel through different experiences, but a lot of people, they were not building up their energy. They're not building up their energy at all. So they just got stuck here and became sort of energy vampires and void of energy and feeding off of each other's energy. So the higher beings were trying to come down to instruct them on how to, such as Jesus and stuff, instruct them on how to restore light energy to themselves so that they could continue on rather than being stuck here. Well, this is what happened to me, is that I decided to come down to help with that. But originally I did come from the sun.
That's really interesting, as this young man said that he came through a portal in the sun, and he was explaining that there are portals to other dimensions and what have you. And in fact, I think his father mentioned that it was the same for him as well. So it's quite interesting also that you were talking about the black holes and they're coded for only particular frequencies. Interestingly, I had an 8-year-old young girl tell me on one of her experiences that the ET she was with in a craft had taken her to see and experience a black hole as well as a wormhole. And she actually described what it was like inside the black hole and how she was seeing planets being exploding and coming back together again, almost like a time loop type of thing.
Yeah, they're passing from one side to another. They're not being ripped apart. They're literally passing from one dimension to another. But the thing is when you come back through them, some of your memories, so that here, because the information is very extensive, some of that information is not to be brought here for now. It's to be guarded from some of the forces here that are definitely warring with the ones trying to evolve this earth. So when I come back through the black hole, some of the memories from the other side would be taken away for that specific reason, to guard me, to make sure that I was safe too, and also so that that information could not be taken and used for anything negative.
Okay, we're just going to a break. If you just mute your microphones, and we'll be back in a few minutes.
Thank you.
Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message. The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
And welcome back to The Divine Truth on Revolution Radio with my co-host this evening, Sarah Adams, and my guest, Mary Rodwell. Before we continue, I just need to remind you that Revolution Radio is a listener-supported station. We do rely on your donations to keep us on air. So please, if you can, go to our website, freedomslips.com, and go to the support us section where you can make a donation, or you can buy one of our seed packs, starting at only $60. All of our seed packs contain non-GMO, non-hybrid heirloom seeds. You can also join our monthly support club, where you can make a donation, a monthly donation, starting at $10, or you can just make a one-off donation. That's at the support us section at freedomslips.com. And welcome back, Mary Rodwell. How are you? Are you still there?
I'm still here, and no worries at all. Is Sarah there?
Is Sarah there? Yeah. Sarah?
I'm still here too.
Okay.
Well, we covered quite a bit in the first hour. I wanted to talk a little bit about the nature of our reality. We've talked about how these children's experiences here on Earth in 3D is very difficult. And there have been things hit in the mainstream about things like the holographic universe. And I wanted to discuss with you, like, how does that fit into our multidimensional experience here on Earth, the holographic universe, the quantum hologram. You know, I mean, I know things like, I mean, for Sarah, the astral is more real than 3D, and I think that's probably the same for a lot of these children. So, I mean, how does that fit in, you know, our holographic universe? How does that fit into the experience that we're supposed to have here?
Taj, it's a very important one, and I think because we are programmed into 3D, we need to understand it from as many levels as possible. You know, everything we call the multidimensional part of our reality, that's intuition, feeling, sensing things that are not physical in a different frequency. You know, everything from clairvoyance, clairaudience. As Dr. Rudy Shield, who's an astrophysicist and part of the free organization, calls the miracles, which he actually helps with other scientists to now create a model that will allow us to understand our non-physical world. And in fact, they've just done a scientific paper that's going to be put into two recognized science periodicals, two journals. One of them is on consciousness, and it really is explaining that model of how the quantum universe, or what we call, you know, the quantum hologram, actually explains all these different experiences that we have in a multidimensional reality, if you like. And one of the interesting things with that is that if we can marry science with our understanding of, you know, our experience, then we can actually start to honor it and trust it. The trouble is, up to now, there's been no kind of model that's allowed us to know how consciousness works. How do we understand consciousness? Where is consciousness? You know we have a brain, but you know consciousness seems to be something else apart from that that travels through all frequencies and we can tap into. One of the interesting things is some science coming from Russia, which has looked at the DNA and how the DNA itself is a clue to how we access the quantum universe. And they're saying that the very nature of DNA creates miniature wormholes that allow us to access, because the DNA is in fact holographic as well, that it allows us through these miniature wormholes to access the quantum universe, which is consciousness, which is where all the information is. And the way we access it, and I'm sure most people will know this from a practical level, you find yourself being really intent on learning about a particular subject or a particular theme. And all of a sudden you find yourself, everywhere you look, there's something on that information. It's almost like by thinking about it, you've drawn it to you. And this is, I believe, how it works with everything, is the mere thought creates that intention, which creates then the access into the matrix. Some would say the Akashic records. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that sort of links into things like the law of attraction and manifesting your own reality and things like that, which is also something that, I've talked about a lot before with Sarah, and she knows a lot about that as well.
I know that I always access I've accessed Agartha, the inner earth. There's a lot of places that I access, but As for the records, I access 2 different records. One is a stream of energy that has everything within it, all information within it, so there can be no lies or nothing hidden. And then there's another place when I was some years ago that I accessed. It was this place that it was very advanced, and it had file on everybody on Earth, but it was goodness, it was as if it was a piece of their energy.
Right.
And it was all filed up. And so whenever there was like a supercomputer, and you could but it was like a interdimensional computer, and I was able to pull up who I was looking for at that point. But it was it showed all their genetics, all the worlds they had went to. Some people had DNA that wasn't human.
Is that like the Akashic record kind of thing, or is it different? To
No,
the
it
Akashic
wasn't.
record?
It was. That's what I'm saying. Is that was totally different. I've accessed that. What this was totally different. I know that it was like the energy imprint of everybody on this world.
Right.
It had it, and there was a supercomputer, and you could pull up just with your mind. You could pull up who you were looking for, and it'd bring that piece of energy up, and it would have all their information, including what worlds they had incarnated, where they came from, their DNA, how much their organs were functioning, everything.
Right.
So
It was.
Sarah, how do you separate them out? One is about really everything to do with information and truth and knowledge. The other is about specific souls and their soul journey. Is that how you saw it?
It was, I access this, so I go to certain places on Earth where there's energetic compartments or energetic flows, and that's where I accessed at this on this one specific energetic flow. I accessed this supercomputer, and it was when I thought about the person that I was looking for their file, I would have, because their energy, I was connected to their energy, I would look through the computer for that piece of energy with all their information on it. Does that make sense? That's how I found their file.
Okay, you mention it like a supercomputer. Are you meaning it in the way we understand a supercomputer? Is this like an AI type thing, or is this something different?
This is what I'm trying to understand, because I've accessed the Akashic records, but this was totally different. It's as if this was filing everything that was on Earth, every single being that was here.
Right. It sounds like some kind of.
I pull it up with my mind. When I got into there, I did have to go through some sort of security, and when I got almost a bit forcefully, but when I got in there, I was able to pull up everything with my mind just through thought. So when I thought about the person, this specific person, it brought up their file right in front of me, and it showed me they had specific DNA from here and there, and also, interestingly enough, whether they had been tampered with. What I found in there were files of people who things were being done to them. So it was quite interesting. I don't know what this belonged to or who this belonged to. It was just something I accessed some years back.
It sounds like some kind of a tracking method where they can track every single person on the planet, like what they're doing, what level their frequency is at, and, their whole history, their whole past lives and everything else. So they can monitor everyone on the planet.
Sarah, can I ask you this? It sounds like you had to get through some kind of security, which is interesting to me, because I'm wondering then, because can you have any sense of the origin of that supercomputer, as you call it? Have you got any sense of how that came to be? Is that something that was orchestrated by human agencies, or was it orchestrated by non-human agencies, or is it something greater than that? Because when we hear about AI and the security, I'm wondering whether it's related to something like that or something greater than that. Do you have a sense of it?
So there's what I call the energetic system, which is everywhere, which I can always access. This was something a bit different. It was advanced. It seemed very like something very advanced AI along with energy. It was sort of mixed in both. I accessed it at a certain point where there's a canyon, and it's very interesting because some years later I watched the X-Files, and I think he accesses a whole huge where there's everybody's files, except it's a way more primitively descripted in the X-Files. I had access that
years before, I do know that the files that were accessing, it was showing that they were leading out certain, even genetic tests, like tweaking genetics and stuff like that on specific people. It was quite interesting because I got through security. Okay, so what I can do is I can, like I said a while ago, I can affect matter and stuff. So I can use energy to access stuff. Everything, you can access anything through energy if you have the right codes. I'm very good at doing that. That's how I accessed this what I call supercomputer. But I do know that I did track that it was somehow connected to the military. Everything was filed on there. They had somehow taken a piece of everybody's energy and filed it. It was vast.
Right.
And it was also research into cybernetics because I remember I got in there and I was going through some of the different files on some specific people, and then I got out of there, because I generally knew I had to get out of there, but it was hidden. It was sort of really, really cloaked, and I was able to access it energetically at this one place.
What I just thought was maybe it was linked to something like the secret space program, where I know Corey Good has talked about a little bit like this. There's 22 different experiments going on Earth, and they have to have some way of tracking all these experiments and tracking all these people. So maybe it's linked to.
They take a piece of the energy. That's what they do, and then because the information's held in the energy, that's what happens. That's why I'm saying, like, some of this, a lot of the negative stuff is going on. It's not ETs. It's definitely a lot of governmental stuff.
Yeah.
So what I'm hearing from you, Sarah, which is really interesting, is almost like you know how to hack into what's going on the planet in terms of what appears to be some kind of supercomputer, artificial intelligence that has information literally on the whole population of this planet and what's actually going on, which is quite different from the Akashic records, which is coming from the spiritual component of consciousness itself. So they're actually two separate things from what you're saying. Is that correct?
The Akashic records is sort of an energetic river of information. This was absolutely different. I'm asking because I've experienced that, and I never was able to find a logical answer, as in from anybody else who experienced it. Since you know a lot about these things, that's why I'm asking you if you knew anything about that. But it did seem like they're tracing everybody who was different or had different DNA. Oddly enough, I pulled up some files where people had dog DNA or had wolf DNA inside of them, and generations of people like that. And they had senses that were extraordinary senses, and they thought it was just normal in their family line. They didn't realize that from a long time ago that it was because they had other DNA.
That makes a lot of sense with a lot of the information coming out about different hybridization, not only with hybridization with the star seeds, which is, connecting to their origins of Pleiades, Arcturus, but the fact that they're doing interspecies and the sense, and have done in the past, I believe, on this planet, that this is one thing that was related to the Atlanteans, is that they were doing, genetic experiments with different life forms, including animals and whatever. And one of the young 8-year-olds told me that she'd seen this being done, that they were actually mixing genetics of different species. She was being shown this when she was taken off planet, that there was this going on. So what I'm hearing from you is what, on one level, the very, the consciousness, raising consciousness, you accessing that through frequency, but also your ability seems to be to access this kind of information. In other words, the truth of what's going on this planet through, and we've heard lots of people talk about artificial intelligence and what have you, and what you're describing is a supercomputer where they have these covert agencies that are also working with trying to use children as kind of super soldier stuff. And there have been adults that have had flashbacks to being trained like this when in underground bases and what have you, being taught how to walk through solid objects, etc., and trained to use their abilities, but for these covert agencies as well. So the energy signature is what you're saying is giving the information to them. And in fact, it's about them having the energy signature of everybody and knowing exactly who they are, what they're about, and their abilities, and etc., on a kind of database, a supercomputer database, which is what, several of the whistleblowers and others, and aware people like yourself are aware is actually going on. And people need to be aware of this as well, that this is how they know how to pick you up and how they can abduct you, because they're understanding that you have information that they want and will use.
This is why soul energy retrieval is so important for a lot of people to do, because they take out the parts that have very important information, you know. I remember doing some work and tracking it to some underground bases where they had taken soul energy. That way, what they could do is they could just absolutely take the person from their body and pull them to the base. Rather, by having a piece of their soul energy, they could just connect like that and pull them directly out of their bodies into the base. So it's very important to do soul work and retrieve your soul energy. I'm really enjoying this, by the way. I'm really enjoying this.
Shall I tell you something that's really important here, Sarah? And it fits in with what you're saying. In the New Human, chapter 19, is a medical doctor, Dr. Marie Rodwell, who had her activation in India a few years ago.
I've spoken to her. She's going to be coming on the show. So,
well, she'll tell you about her work, which is actually clearing the DNA, activating the DNA, clearing the program, implants, all the things that are actually controlling us without us being aware of it. Part of her work now is as a shamanic healer, and that's what she's doing. And there are others doing a similar. I've met a number of other people like her that are also doing this kind of work, where they're activating the DNA, but also clearing it, and if you like, making the person a clearer channel to access their awareness and, you know, evolve and shift in consciousness. This is going on, and I think there are many probably out there. But the great thing is when you have people who are credible in the sense of 3D, I mean, there's nothing more credible than a medical doctor that's coming out and now working as a shamanic healer, if you like, where she's, helping to activate the DNA. But she's one of a number of people now that are telling me they can do similar work. So we've got them on the planet and they're working this way, even though for most people this will sound very strange and bizarre. The bottom line is, from what you're saying, Sarah, which is really important, is that, you know, that when they're cleared, then this is going to shift the way they're controlled through this kind of supercomputer you're mentioning that has, you know, the parts of the, you know, the soul aspect and energy signature of individuals on this planet.
It could maybe possibly be tied to Atlantis. I remember living in Atlantis. I even remember the fall of Atlantis. I remember going through the underneath system where all the crystal grid computer was to get out of there. I just went to another dimension. I remember it. And that time, I do remember that Atlantis, that the stories of Atlantis that are being given are very, very monitored, as you know, the relics all around the world, whether it's the Mayans, whether it's the Egyptians, even the face on Mars, used to all be a whole great civilization that spread across the planets of very evolved beings. And I remember living there, and then something happened, some sort of great war, something happened, broke out. That's some of the things that I remember. You know, the little boy in Russia, well, he's definitely around 20 or something now, but he was talking about the war on Mars or something like that. These are some of the memories that I have, and something happened to make everybody fall in frequency or vibration. We retreated to the other realms, and where we originally came from, and then decided to come back when we could to help bring the vibration of the planet back up.
Well, that makes a lot of sense too. And they were, you know, that what I understood was the Atlanteans went more with technology, where Lemuria was working with the spiritual, you know, evolving spiritually to do the same thing. But what we're being headed towards is technology, so that we won't, you know, ascend or go to a higher consciousness. But there's a young lady that is in my book called Lee Capitelli, who calls herself a Homo Novus. And she remembers Atlantis going down, because she remembers being there at the very time that Atlantis went under, basically went under the surface of the water. And she describes it in minute detail, even what happened to her bird that was there that was getting panicky. And this blast that she said happened when the land mass actually went down. She actually recalls it in minute detail, but she also talks about the crystal skulls, and what she was saying about the crystal skulls was they were like a hard drive. And she explained that, you know, she had her own crystal skull, and what she used to do as a researcher was download the information and research into the crystal skull as her hard drive, which would then contain all the information if something happened to her. So she was very aware that, you know, of the properties of crystal skulls, for example, as hard drives, literally as, you know, a way of containing information that was downloaded into the particular frequency that came from their own consciousness into the skull itself. But what was fascinating was that she said that in Bermuda, they found under the water some pyramids, and you know, that they've been discovered recently. And it was interesting that I sent this to her saying, look at this pyramid under the water in Bermuda. And she said, oh, she said, that's one of the power sources of Atlantis. She said, because she'd recognized it as one of the power sources. So we've got to start realizing there are many, many people on this planet that can give us perhaps a more accurate picture of what's happened, you know, in our history, and archaeologically and anthropologically, if we listen to them. Whereas, you know, at the moment we have those trained in those particular areas of knowledge that are making suppositions and what have you, and we're not actually listening perhaps to people who may actually remember that that's one of their past lives, and we could start to get some real understanding of what happened in our past if we looked at this and we looked at corroborating that kind of information, as you're mentioning, and let's start seeing if we can find some way of getting a real understanding of our true history.
The ice caps on the planet, they're a computer system. They're a crystal computer system. The frozen ice is exactly like crystals.
Okay.
They hold, yes, so they're the central computer system that hold a lot of information on this planet.
The water contains information, doesn't it? So if you
Yes,
imagine,
but the ice caps, specifically the ice caps, because they when water's frozen, it conducts exactly like crystals energetically. So,
Okay.
you know how you're saying that information's held within crystals? Well, it's held within the ice caps on the planet.
So there's many
Very
ways we can
ancient
access
information.
information.
Yes. So there's a couple of different ways to access that information. It also, that's where you can literally stare the planet in frequency, because anything done on the ice caps, just like with crystals, it almost a million or billion times how can I explain this? Amplifies it.
Yeah.
So anything done on the ice caps of the planet affects the whole world. So it would, to light up the planet is a ship almost of energy. We are in lower frequencies at certain points. I feel the planet goes it goes up and down. It's especially right now, it's going up and down with all the election stuff. It's going up and down. It's quite interesting. But yes, to steer the planet, it can be done from the ice caps through a group with intent. With strong intent.
Is that why you think there's a lot of stuff going on in Antarctica?
Yes.
Because that's all controlled, isn't it?
Yes.
The whole
Why
of
do you think
Antarctica
that
is
Hitler was
controlled.
trying to go to Antarctica?
Yeah, so in a way you can control the whole planet from Antarctica, couldn't you, if you knew
Because
how to do
if
that?
you had control of the crystal grid system of the Earth, which is basically the ice caps.
Yeah, that makes sense, yeah.
So the highest magicians, because this is what I remember, I know because I was one of them, even when we were on Mars, we could do anything. We would be sort of in a group, and through our intent, we could literally do anything. We could light the cores of planets back up. It was through sort of focused intent, and also you have to have the right energy codes. So those ice caps are very, very much encoded. I believe that a lot of the genetic stuff Hitler was trying to do was maybe to create somebody who had the DNA to access that information.
Right, yeah.
He was looking for something.
So So that is the reason that many they're saying are going to Antarctica at the moment also is because of what they've found
Trying to
under
crack
the
codes
ice.
up there, but yes, there's so much up there that's been okay. So also per se, if there were any lower consciousness, it would be stored away. It would be, let's say there was a consciousness who was vampirical, it would be stored away, sort of like on a hard drive in a way. It would be sort of bound energetically and sort of put, when it says they're asleep, or it says the Titans are asleep.
Like in a prison, yeah, like an energetic prison, yeah.
Yes, so it just put us there's a very lovely part of Doctor Who where they start singing to this monster and it slowly goes to sleep. I don't know if you guys have ever watched that part of Doctor Who where there's this little girl and this group and they're singing, and the singing from their voices literally puts these negative beings asleep, because it's so beautiful, and the energy from it, so it puts them into a sleeping state. Well, that's exactly how lower consciousness things used to be taken care of on that sort of level. So they're also, what they're doing when they're doing this is that they don't realize they're opening themselves up to all sorts of different things. They don't know how this planet functions totally. I think they figured it out to a point. I also think that they think there's some source of power by, trying to access all of this technology. Yeah. But also they also don't know that there are some things that they should just not play with, because, well, the ancients, they sort of put those things to sleep, That's how worlds are formed.
There's a lot of hidden
worlds are formed like that.
There's a lot of hidden technology and stuff which maybe in Antarctica, which they think they can control, but they probably have no idea what they're messing with down there, really.
You think about Superman. Superman does represent, that's exactly how I remember everybody before the fall was sort of like Superman. They were multi-dimensional. Superman, where does he always go to? With the whole crystal system, where does he always remember everything from? He goes to the ice caps.
Okay.
Right, yeah. Yeah, that's true.
So it's telling us really, symbolically, that this is where some of the information and understanding is being held.
Oh, no, there's not some of it. All of the world's information are held within the ice caps, which are the computer, the literal grid system, crystal grid system of the world. It's held like that. Some of the water is from, water information is held in water. Even from other planets, water has been brought here. Lots of information have been brought here specifically, so that when everybody lit up, because we are all water in our bodies, so that when everybody lights up, they will become multidimensional again. The literal ice caps are part of that.
So how do they access that information that's held there then, Sarah?
Well, that's when, so as much as everybody's come here, all these very gifted children and stuff, there are a good amount of those who will know how to access that. In fact, they will have the right codes from a long time ago. They'll have the right codes. They're sending anybody, recently I just discovered a group who I knew was not all that quite positive, who is traveling up there and doing work, and oddly enough, I was wondering, why are they being paid so well to go up there and do this work? Well, the lower forces and also, the ones that want to keep everything sort of tied down, they are trying to do anything to access that information, also put negative intent. Like I said, it's escalated by sort of 1 billion times. The ones that have the right energy codes, if they're brought up there, they could definitely do amazing work on bringing the planet up. If you got a group of gifted children to just, with their intent, to go ahead and do some work up there, it would literally affect the hearts of everybody on the planet. It would affect the oceans. It would affect everything, because that's that's the central crystal grid system of the Earth.
Yeah, I guess it could be used in either way, depending on your intent. Like whatever they have down there, it can be used for good and for bad. But
there's energy codes to it, so it's, trust me, the beings that constructed all of this, they're highly intelligent, and they knew that this was going to come to pass. So eventually there were codes, that energetic codes put on there. So unless they still energy to be able to, because if you don't have the right amount of energy, you can't access this stuff. So they would have to steal a lot of energy, and they'd have to have the right energy code. So it's really hard for them to sort of hack this stuff. So what they're doing is they're trying to do cloning. They're trying to take hybrid children that
Yeah,
are very
yeah.
precious and try to force them to do things. So
Yeah.
so they're really trying on every level. It's almost absolute desperation.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah.
So really, it's all about frequency. Ultimately, you're saying
yes.
it's so, and only the ones that will.
Pyramids, all of this will light up. The pyramids and all of this will light up. This is okay. So the pyramids, all of this is aligned. There's pyramids on Mars. There's pyramids on every single planet. There's pyramids on the moon. They're all aligned. Okay. So this is technology from a long time ago. When people start lighting up their DNA, when they start to actually start to sort of evolve, and when they start to acknowledge that, in the Bible it says the children, that it's the healing that and the truth will come from the mouth of babes. This is very, very true. When they start to realize how divine the children are and how divine children have been sent to humanity, these children know how to access all this technology from a long time ago, from quote their parents. All of this will light up, and it's going to have an effect on it. It will heal everything. It will push down all the lower energies back into, because the lower energies have been from 1D and 2D have leaked in hot into the Earth's realm, and so that will be all pushed back down, and Earth and everything will flourish, and everybody will become back multidimensional. This is the plan for everything in the end.
So do you have any sense of a time frame for that?
Time doesn't exist where I come from, so it's very hard to say.
I know, I realize, but a lot of people feel a sense of anticipation, almost anxiety, and a sense there's not a lot of time left. They're the kinds of feelings people have. Do you have a sense of why that is?
I just remember is that there was a meeting with Obama, and per se a soul meeting or an energetic where he was met with, and they told him that he needed to disclose to disclose to the world the presence of higher beings, and they refused at that time. And just recently I had another dream, and this dream said that if that Trump is, he's going to be the last. All I was told was he's going to be the last president before the ancients return. That's what I was told in this dream, and it was a very powerful dream, very, very powerful dream. And it was as if this is the last president before this happens. And that kind of, for me, because I'm telepathic and because I sort of I'm a guardian, I can hear, I could feel the turmoil of different stuff, and I understand why this could be where they come back because of this, because of the turmoil going on Earth right now.
Yeah, like you were saying before, it may come to almost World War III before they
That's
turn
what
up.
I would always
before
think
they
as a
turn up.
child, and I get
Yeah.
goosebumps right now, is that we would be on the brink of a third world war, and that they would return,
Right.
So we need to be in a particular crisis before this event may
Nobody's
occur.
going to want to give, exactly, because nobody's going to want to get better and listen if they're not really put in a hole. People don't ask for help unless they're literally in a hole. So they have to realize is that something's really wrong with the world, and there's still a good amount of people who, like we were saying, can't see what's wrong with the world. They think going to a job is absolutely normal. They think getting vaccines and eating crappy food is absolutely normal. They don't realize they're enslaved. So the world has to go to a brink of where everybody wakes up and sees there's something absolutely wrong before it happens.
Mm.
And this is the chaos we're seeing at the moment, isn't it?
Yes.
Everything's being uncovered, and all the corruption. People are starting to see things now that they never saw before, and this is all the start of it, from what I understand.
It's going to go more into chaos once they realize that their world leaders have sold them out. Once they realize that their health systems are really bad. Everything is really, really bad, that it's not set up to help them, but it's set up to rob them of soul energy. Another thing, soul energy. Energy is very important, especially for the secret space program. I believe they're using energy to travel through space and to travel through time. you have to use energy, not fuel. So they're stealing a lot of energy from humanity like that. And I believe it's for certain programs. I do believe there's also the lower forces that seeped in here, lower energies that just absorb energy. And this is very, very much of why society is the way it is. They're not just suppressing people for nothing. They're suppressing them because they're getting something from it. They're getting energy from it.
Okay, and part of that is also this fear program that, you know, we're seeing everything's about fear at the moment. You know, it's like that's how people are controlled. Through
when a person gets fearful, they let out energy. So a person's system, their aura and everything. Okay, so they have the aura, the chakra system. They have a shield around them. But if that shield is continuously put under stress, then it breaks. And every time they get a negative emotion, if they cry, if they're really sick or really ill, or if they're depressed, they lose soul energy, light energy from themselves. And this is the whole thing of, you know, why they're pushing so much fear. This is why there's a lot of bombings going on. These are all set up to get people fearful so that so that soul energy can then be gathered.
It's also to keep people's frequency down as well. And if you're in fear, it's very difficult for you to raise your frequency to, you know.
It's like a balloon. When you blow a balloon up with helium, it starts to float. The more frequency, the more energy a person has in their body, it lights up that so-called junk DNA, which isn't junk DNA, by the way. It lights them up, and it starts to make them multidimensional and able to access and communicate with beings that are very good and helpful to them. It allows them to be multidimensional. So they try to keep people void of energy, just functioning on lower energy levels so that they're not multidimensional.
Yeah, they just keep them at a level where they can be controlled, they can go to work, they can do what, you know, they need to do in their daily lives, and no more than that, basically, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just the five senses like we were speaking about earlier.
Yeah. So most people don't really have any access to multidimensional abilities. They're kept down, they're sort of dumbed down, like society is. I guess dumbed down. I mean, probably about 80% of society is dumbed down to an extent, isn't it, really?
So, Sarah, in that case, what could you tell people from your own understanding and your awareness, what they need to do to transcend the fear and to actually, you know, help activate themselves so that they are of a higher frequency? What would you suggest to them?
This is where I suggest a lot of, food that has chi in it, a lot of vegetables, alkalizing your body, juicing, doing sun gaze and anything to instill energy within your body. Meditation, where I often connect to the earth, to the sun, to the sea, and request it to give me energy. There's a whole list of things that you can do, and just to avoid politics, avoid anything that's going to stir up your energy, avoid anything that's super emotional, that's going to pull you into lower emotions.
Avoid negativity. It's the biggest one, isn't it? Avoid negativity
I really
and fear.
think that it's anything that emotionally stirs you. Every time a person is severely emotionally stirred, this is why I don't like horror movies. Horror movies are the best thing to put people into fear and literally leech a lot of energy out of them. So anything that disturbs you, you need to definitely look at it, but try to avoid it as much as possible. I see people just online arguing about politics, and very awakened people, and it's incredible the amount of energy they're losing they're losing. They need to stop it. It's really about looking within yourself and building yourself up. And once you do this, you're going to build up more and more light energy. And when you build up that more and more light energy, it's going to activate your DNA more. It's going to make you multidimensional, and it's going to make you able to access, the dimensions and access all the beautiful beings waiting for you. And all of these beautiful beings are waiting for man to become multidimensional again. At one point, man was multidimensional, and they fell from that. And literally, the hosts of heaven, and whatever you want to call them, ETs, angels, or whatever, they're waiting for man to ascend back into multidimensionality, to become one with the universe again.
Yeah, I agree.
Because it's like the prodigal son. It's the lost sheep or the prodigal son of the universe.
The thing I find is there's a lot of what you call distractions, like politics and stuff that keep you occupied, where you don't actually have time to do any of the work to make you multidimensional, because you're watching the football or you're watching the politics or you're doing stuff that isn't really that important. But we didn't come here to watch football and vote and go to work and stuff like that. So that's all like one big distraction.
Exactly. Humanity doesn't realize how precious their souls are, and that they originally come from divine, from the light, that they're a piece of light. They don't realize this, and I think that it's quite beautiful, because in the end everybody's going to awaken to that. And I have deep faith in this, and I've seen the world awaken. Growing up, I've seen the world awaken more and more and more, and I know that eventually the whole world will wake up to it.
Mary.
And that is a really important one, when people hear about all the stuff that's going on that they're having to deal with, and in this container that we've been programmed into, to feel that things will change, that it isn't all going to be dark forever and ever, amen. And one of the things I've always liked to leave people with is that sense of hope, that we actually have been born because we want to be part of this, we want to be part of that shift. And we know that we are capable of doing so much more, as you said. And this 9-year-old told me that, she said, human beings, Mary, are so amazing. They have no idea how amazing they are, but they've got to believe it first, was the thing that she said. And of course, we're programmed to believe that we are unable to do anything, that we need always everybody else to enable us to achieve anything, that we've got to get the degrees, or we've got to get a job, we've got to have the house, we've got to have all these things that actually distract us from working with that inner self that knows that a lot of this stuff is actually not really what we're here for.
Mary, I wanted to ask you, we're going to finish in about 10 minutes. There's one other topic I wanted to cover. You talk a bit about orbs in a lot of your talks, and I wanted to just, for our listeners, if you can talk a little about the different types of orbs, and why are they here, and what are they? I mean, are they here to help us, guide us? What are the orbs, and why are they here?
It's a very good question, Taj, and I've got a lot of information that I've come across over the years about the orbs. What I think is brilliant is that we now have the technology to take photographs of them, and they seem to be a number of things. What I now have come to understand is that when you go out of body, you often go out in, an orb of light. In other words, they call it the Merkaba.
Right,
and so when you're sleeping and you're traveling, often that's the form that you may take. That's the form many ETs will take when they come in to visit people. They have seen them walk out, open up from an orb into a being, for example. So it's a light body, if you like. And, there are orbs that I've got a wonderful bit of footage that a gentleman sent to me where he was actually healed by an orb. So that was obviously a healing intelligence that came in. He actually filmed this blue orb that expanded into his body, and he had a tumor on his neck. And this tumor actually then shriveled up, and he ended up with being cured by this particular orb. So their intelligences, interdimensional intelligences, they're also ourselves when we're out of body. There are probably orbs that also do monitoring and this kind of thing as well. So there's a whole range of things they can be, but certainly, sorry, were you going to say something, Sarah, here?
Sometimes there's small little beings in those orbs too, like they're small little mini energetic ships.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. So we're just beginning to understand that they can be a multitude of things, but the main thing is that they are intelligent. And I've actually remember calling one in when I was trying to prove that they were conscious, when I sort of went out on the balcony and I said to a friend of mine, just hang in there, I'm going to ask one of them to come and show themselves on the photograph. And I spent a few minutes until I felt, and I couldn't see it, but I felt it was there. And I said, now take the photograph, and a meter from my hand was an orb. I've even called in different colored orbs, which I think are just different frequencies of intelligence. So, they're conscious. They operate, if you like, us in a multidimensional state. That's how I come to understand them. But there are also others, and as Sarah was saying, there are others as well. Sometimes they can be craft. So there's a whole range of them, and I think it's fabulous that we can actually see them now, literally on photographs with the right kind of camera. And usually the cheaper cameras are the best, by the way. The ones with too many filters can filter them out. So, you know, in a nutshell, that's how I come to understand the orbs.
Okay. Sarah, have you had any experiences with orbs?
Yes, all the time. Sometimes they're souls, sometimes they're beings, sometimes they're just energy intelligences. It really, really depends. I've had experiences with orbs, cubes. You name it, the list is really long. Well, you know, Taj, I'm always telling you.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, but they're mostly like they're usually like positive experiences, aren't they?
Yes.
Yeah.
I really like crop. My thing is crop circles. I love crop circles. I think they're most amazing. They have energy codes in them that you can just look at and download information from them, and it lights up your DNA. I think crop circles are divine.
It's actually wonderful the many ways that we're being triggered to wake up, and part of that is these wonderful things like the crop circles, for example, and other things, other phenomena as we call it, all have energy signatures that are affecting us and the planet. And I think that's really exciting to know that there are many different ways we're being assisted in this way. I too love the crop circles and have been in one myself, and I just found it quite amazing.
Mm. A lot of
They're
this
sacred. The crop circles are sacred. Go ahead.
A lot of this hasn't really become like mainstream though. It almost like the only way I can put it is like it does seem like we're fighting a losing battle in some sense. That to wake people up and to make them understand what's going on in the world on a multi-dimensional level, it's hard to explain to people, isn't it? Really, that all this stuff is going on which you can't see, and that it's, you know, it's on another level which, you know, most of the people would find it difficult to understand. How do you think, Mary, is the best sort of approach for like someone who hasn't come across this kind of stuff before to explain it to them, to like wake them up kind of thing?
Well, I think, you know, that people are, you know, that have incarnated now, many of them have, you know, the business plan that is certain something's going to happen to wake them up. And for some people, it may be a grief experience, losing someone very close to them opens them up. Or it may be a near-death experience or a healing experience or seeing a UFO. Lots of different ways people are being woken up to. And it's that activation is quite scary. You know, that was the reason I wrote Awakening, was because going through the process of accepting you're not just in a 3D world, but a multidimensional one can be very confronting. And the more you're educated, often the harder it is for you to deprogram yourself into that. But start off with the tangibility that we're being visited. There's so much evidence out there now in the disclosure of, you know, the fact that whistleblowers, that there are people that know that this is a reality. That's a good basis to start, but then start looking at our history in a different way. All the images that we've got in artwork that are showing UFOs, that are showing craft. And, you know, what was interesting was the fascinating thing of the gods. The gods were really just extraterrestrial in many cases that were showing high technology that was seen like magic, you know, in past times. It's just about reframing the way that we understand what we're being taught. And as you start to do it, you start to see how everything starts to click into place. But most people start to, when they open up to their intuition, to start trusting that knowing, that sensing, that feeling that they get, when they start listening to that and start trusting and opening themselves up to the possibilities, is when we start to get the shift. And it's happening in so many different ways across this planet now. And that's what gives me hope, is because people are waking up and being activated. And it's really now about us owning ourselves and owning our truth. The way Sarah's been doing it, she's been sharing deep parts of herself, knowing there'll be people there that will struggle with some of that information. But there'll be many others that say, oh my goodness, there's somebody else out there that feels the same as me. Thank heavens for that. I'm not crazy after all.
Thank you so much. I like I said, I've enjoyed this show a lot. I have. It's definitely one of my favorites.
Mary, you said
well, for me, Sarah, it's been an absolute pleasure to be so open with your experiences and saying how it is for you, because that gives other people permission to say, well, you know what, I've thought this forever and I've never been able to say it or give myself permission to think it. And you're doing that by coming out and saying your truth. And there'll be many out there that will be extremely grateful to you for that.
Thank you. You guys are cutting out.
Yes.
I'm going to finish in a couple of minutes, Mary. Do you want to give like information out to where people can contact you? Best way to contact you?
It's very, very easy. If you want to find information about me, Google Mary Rodwell. But I've got two websites, maryrodwell.com.au or ACERN.com.au. That's ACERN.com.au. I'm also on Facebook, and any of those ways you can connect with me.
Okay. I just want to finish on a positive note. You said before, humanity has been here 3 times before, but this time there's a 95% chance that we will make it, and I hope that's true. And I pray it's true, because if you look at the world the way it is at the moment, you could almost lose hope in a way. But I think with a lot of the children that you've spoken to, the star children, and even people like Sarah, I think there's a lot of hope in the world. There's a lot of good people in the world. And I think we should always concentrate on the positive aspects of our life rather than, the fear and the negativity that is surrounding us all of the time. So I think if anything we can take away from this show is that there's always hope. And there's always hope for humanity. There's always hope for all of us. So I just want to finish on that note. Is there anything else you want to say, Mary, before we close up the show?
I think that's a wonderful way, Taj, to end. And that was a 12-year-old that told me this. He said, people are getting more in tune with things. It's the shift that's affecting everyone. It's the star seeds and indigos of the planet Gaia cherishes, because they help the vibration of the planet. But a lovely 8-year-old said to her nanny, she said, "Don't worry, Nana, they're guiding us home." And I think that says it all.
That's very lovely.
Okay, we're going to finish in about a minute or so, I think. So
Okay.
I just want to thank Mary for coming on the show. It's been a great couple hours talking with you and listening to you and Sarah talk. I could probably sit here for hours listening to you guys talk, really. So we may have to have you back on, Mary.
Oh, it's been an absolute pleasure and actually an absolute delight to speak with both of you. And Sarah, just keep doing what you're doing, because it's so important now for those like yourself that do understand, to help everyone else own their truth and their awareness. Thank you.
Again, thank you, Mary. You're very gracious and beautiful, so thank you.
Okay,
Bye.
and that's the music coming in. So thank you again, Mary, for coming on the show. And
Pleasure.
And thanks, Sarah. And good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.